A quick note from me, your host, about something close to my heart. I want to thank Creative Space for supporting this episode. Creative Space is a co-working community that's been invaluable to me. It's a space where solo professionals and change makers gather. People focus on projects that support people and planet, aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals and the Inner Development Goals. This community perfectly matches Stories for the Future's values through its focus on collaboration, diversity, and meaningful support. If you're self-employed or moving towards solopreneurship, visit getcreativespace.com to join our supportive international community. Hey there, and welcome back to another episode. I have really been looking forward to sharing this conversation with you because we're diving into the heart of what it really means to lead during times of chaos, change, and complexity. And that time is now for many of us. My guest is the brilliant and wonderful Sylvana Rochet. She is a strategic advisor and executive coach to visionary leaders building solutions for our planet, people, and society. Her guidance enables them to lead with less friction and greater impact as they scale, pivot, or evolve. We'll talk about how to lead through uncertainty without losing your mission or your mind, what happens to our identity during career shifts, and how to build true resilience from the inside out. There is so much practical wisdom in this conversation. It's almost like a masterclass in leadership, both for leading yourself and others. My advice, take this one for a walk. Put on some good shoes and enjoy all the benefits of movement while you absorb valuable insights for your knowledge bank. Let's dive in. Welcome, Sylvana. I'm so happy to have you as my guest on the podcast, and I have so many questions, so I think I need to limit myself for your sake and for the listeners, but welcome.
Thank you so much. I am so pumped to be here with you today.
That's good. And you are based in France at the moment.
Yes.
But on LinkedIn, you call yourself the American coach in France. So that's interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about what's that connection?
Yeah,
are you from France?
That?
And yeah, what's up with that?
Oh, where am I from? I don't think I can even answer that question. I am what you call a third culture kid. And what that means is, a third culture kid is somebody who was born in a certain country that is usually not the country of their parents. And then each of their parents has a different culture, a different country that they came from. So this child is the product of three countries or three cultures, so to speak. So I'm a third culture kid because I was born in the United States to a French father and a Colombian mother. I grew up between France and Colombia as a young child and then moved to the States in high school and, did like most of my adult life in the States, I would say, went to university in the States, worked in New York, lived and worked in California. So I feel like culturally, I am very, very much a American from the USA, but I also have these very strong cultural links that are very much part of my life to France and to Colombia. And obviously I speak the language and I have family in both of these countries. So that's sort of my thing. When I moved back to France 2 years ago with my husband, my very American husband, our American-born children, I was thinking about what to call myself here in France to sort of differentiate myself, something that would be a little unique about me. So I came up with a friend, actually. She was the one who said, you should call yourself the American coach in France. And I said, yeah, that has a fun ring to it. Let's try it out and see. But I could have been, called many other things just because of I'm a mutt. I'm such a mix.
Right. But it's really interesting because with your connection to the US and where you live at the moment, and because lately on my podcast, I had this focus on having quite a lot of guests coming from the US or being connected to the US, mainly to show the world that it's so important at the moment that we don't stereotype and put everyone in one box. So that's one reason why you fit right in. But also I'm focusing on people who have knowledge about how to navigate changes in life and in career. And we're going through all these changes in the world, like for people on the personal level, but also in organizations and everything. So you fit right into that category of great helpers, I think. So for sure, yeah. and I would love to start with your own background, because you have this really interesting journey yourself, I think. So could you just share a little bit about that before we dive into all the meat?
Sure. Yeah. I have had what I would call a nonlinear career. I like to say I'm like the Madonna of, professional women. I feel like I've reinvented myself a
Yeah.
couple of times as I have evolved as a human, and as my interest and my knowledge has evolved, I've also evolved professionally. So I'm a political scientist by training. And when I was studying, I thought I would go, work at the UN or something like that, and just do that type of really international work, which fit in with my personal background. And I very quickly saw that that type of environment would not be for me. I'm kind of somebody who's unorthodox, and I don't like to follow the way things are done before, and I don't like hierarchy. I have a hard time with, like, this is the way we've always done things, and now you got to keep doing it this way, right? So I went to work in public health and international development, and I worked in various countries of Latin America, Africa, doing public health programs of all kind, right? So it was a lot of strategic planning, implementation, program management, that sort of thing, and a lot of liaising with nonprofits and ministries of health and policymakers, right? All the aim of this work that we were doing was always to influence policy. So that was a really great first part of my career, almost a decade. And one of the things that struck me when I was doing that work was that poor leadership is everywhere in the world. It doesn't matter if you are a minister of health in a really high position. It doesn't matter if you are on, the CEO of a company in New York. It doesn't matter if you are working in customs in Ethiopia. Like, I just saw bad leadership everywhere. And as I got more interested in that, because I was also trying to be a good leader for my teams, right? And back then, 15 years ago when I was doing this work, there was no budget for me to get coaching when I was, a director of a department or anything like that. So I was investing my own money and my own time to become a better leader. And I'm looking around me and going, these people in high positions don't know how to be leaders, because it's really hard. And I learned and understood that the reason why people in positions of leadership are crappy leaders is not because they're bad people or they don't care. It's because they never learned the tools. You and I going to school, we probably didn't get a lot of education on emotional intelligence, learning to understand yourself, learning to understand how other people function, learning to understand how psychology impacts all of us when we interact with one another. Just these principles for how to be with others in a way that is effective and grounded and emotionally intelligent. So that is how I came to coaching. From that first career, being really disappointed with just kind of realizing that bad leadership is everywhere. It's not anybody's fault. But if people learn the tools, then it becomes much easier. It's something that you can learn, just like if you're an engineer and you went to school to become an engineer, like, you can learn leadership skills. You can learn emotional intelligence applied to your leadership. And these are trainable skills. And that's when I made the decision. It was about 12 years ago, I made the decision to go back to school so I could, do a full program in executive coaching to become a certified coach. And I decided that this was going to be my mission from here on, that I wanted to bring the skills, these trainable skills, to people who are in leadership positions, who are doing important things in our world, who have a beautiful mission. They're very smart. They have good technical skill, but boy, do they struggle at leading humans. So that became my mission, and that's what I've been up to for the past decade.
Right. So I read that you that was also on your LinkedIn profile, I think. You are a strategic advisor to those building a better world. So again, spot on.
Yes.
Yeah. So what tell us about what kind of people is it that you work with mainly?
Sure. So I mainly work with founders and CEOs or CXOs, COOs, CTOs, also a lot of CTOs, just a lot of engineers who are building solutions for our planet. And I'm talking about healthcare and climate solutions mostly, just because these are areas that are very close to my heart and that I have knowledge in, right? Because I don't just want to come in and coach my clients on leadership skills and emotional intelligence at work and business psychology. I also work on strategic items with them. And if I have my public health background, and I've worked with climate initiatives for a very long time, so I've been very steeped in this topic. I want to be able to also work on strategic pieces with my clients. So it's not just coaching, it's really advising also. If there is a particular business problem that they're having, I want to be able to do it in a way that's coming from a knowledgeable place. So I wouldn't advise someone, in a topic that I don't really have much knowledge on, even though if I was doing pure coaching, you don't really need to have the subject matter expertise. But because I do coaching and advising, strategic advising, I focus on the areas, the areas that I know about, which is health and climate.
Yeah, I like that. Because sometimes I feel that coaching is, what do you think about it? When you're like, yeah. So I love it when the coaching also it's a bit of both advisory and using the coaching techniques, right?
And I'm actually a bad, quote unquote, bad coach, because when you are a pure coach, like when I graduated from my coaching school, et cetera, one of the things that they really test you on is making sure that you are just coaching when you're coaching and you are letting the client come to their own answer. But I find that if you really want to be helpful to somebody, you have to be able to also have an opinion.
Yeah. I agree.
And you have to be able to be a thought partner for them. I think that's what my clients appreciate most about me is they know they have a true thought partner in me. And I always tell them, I say, if I think you're about to do something stupid, I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to just sit there and be like, oh, if that's what you think, go for it. You have your solution. So I think it's important that when you're advising, especially people that are at the founder or CEO level, that you have something to say and that you can be a counterweight to where they're going with certain things. Because what happens with they call it the ivory tower. What happens with CEOs is they tend to kind of become closed into a bubble where they have a lot of people telling them yes. They have few people challenging them. They have their board. Obviously, the board can play that role. But the people on the board, they're not full-time employees and they're not paying attention to every detail. Like they have other things. They're on 7 other boards. So it may not be, you may not have, when you're CEO, you may not have people around you who are really paying attention, close attention to kind of your every move and how you're going about things to say, you need to do something different here. This isn't really working, right? So that ivory tower syndrome is really real. And I think for CEOs, it is priceless to have somebody who is on your side, who has no agenda other than helping you become the best of the best, and who's going to tell you the things that you need to hear that nobody else may be telling you.
Exactly. So looking at where you used to live in the US, you lived in California, did you say? Yeah.
Yes, we lived in California and Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz. Oh,
the Silicon Valley Beach.
Yeah. It sounds really nice. But looking at that and the situation in the US, and me only watching from a distance, of course, but we hear about all these massive layoffs and people losing their jobs a lot in government jobs, perhaps, but also in other organizations and maybe non-profits, organizations relying on funding, etc., etc. So how do you see that affecting both the leaders but also the employees in this situation where they have to go through this, and it's, I guess, unexpected to a degree. It comes like a tsunami. And what do you see? How do you see it affecting people?
Yeah, for sure. This situation that we're in right now is in the United States, but that is impacting the whole world, is definitely a tsunami, because I don't think people in business were expecting that the White House would be taking decisions that are, for now at least, seeming anti-growth and anti-business, essentially. So it definitely has felt like a tsunami, because I think even people who supported the current president did not know that this was going to turn out this way. So there's a huge shock. There's a sense of panic for some people. And the way that I'm seeing it with the people that I'm supporting, so we have the CEOs that have entered what I call the wartime CEO mode. And so it's like really intense. They themselves are pulling in really long hours. They're having really intense weeks. They're trying to find funding wherever they can, right? Like the funding that, if they're raising a round of funding, maybe it's coming in later, it's being delayed. Like all of these things are happening that were not expected in the plan for 2025 when they're thinking about their revenue goals, etc. So there's that. So these CEOs are going into wartime mode, and that looks not very pretty. Again, because none of us were taught growing up how to manage our internal psychology when we get triggered and when we're under stress. So I'm seeing a lot of bad behaviors, both, at the personal level, like they're not eating well, they're not sleeping, they've stopped exercising, they're just so stressed out and so amped up about I gotta keep this company afloat. And I understand it's coming from a place of wanting to save the company, right? Like there are real stakes here. Where that becomes a problem is when that starts to bleed into how they're showing up for their companies, for their employees, for the people around them. Because I have to constantly remind my clients, you're the CEO. This company is your baby, but your employees, they are not thinking about this company the same way that you are. They are thinking about, I need to have a paycheck to feed my family. I need to, still be able to get out at a decent hour so that I can have my life, et cetera, et cetera. So there's this disconnect where we have the leaders who are really working hard to get the company ahead, who have this, I would say, nervous and stressed out energy. It's bleeding into their employees. And it comes out sometimes as not great behaviors, like, saying things that you shouldn't be saying, having reactions that are just not taken well by people around you, right? So the employees also are feeling this. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing with clients right now is helping these CEOs, these founders, these CXOs to manage their internal stuff, to really get clear on what the priorities are so that they can lower the temperature a bit. It's like, okay, this is a stressful time, but it doesn't mean that you need to become a crazy person, because that's not going to help your employees. You are panicking them right now, right?
Yeah.
So I help them work on what I call the 3 C's. This is a framework that I use during transitions and pivot points and tricky times in life. So the 3 C's is clarity, curiosity, and courage. And I'll explain what those are. So clarity, and it's always number one. When I'm coaching someone in a session, I say, okay, let's do a brain dump of all the things that are occupying your mind right now, all of the problems, right? Give me like the 2 minutes of like, bleh. I call it word vomit. And then the clarity, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get clear on what truly matters here. What truly needs to be addressed? What is a fire that looks really, urgent and whatnot, but it actually isn't? And what is the 1 or 2 things that you just need to put your energy and your focus towards, and everything else is just noise? So let's get clear on what you need to be working on. That's number 1. Number 2 is we're going to work on curiosity. What I mean by that is look at what is your strategy right now? Let's get curious about what's not working. What could you be doing differently? What do you need to stop doing because it's a waste of time, right? Let's get curious about how you're going about things and how you could improve that. Curious also means sometimes reaching out to people. I have so many instances of me saying to a leader, who could you reach out to right now who would be better at solving this problem than you? And they go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't think of this before. Of course.
Yeah.
I'm going to have Jen work on this, right? Like, of course I can take this off my plate. So that's the curiosity piece. It's look at what you're doing and where could you be making changes and tweaks to have things work better. And number 3 is the courage. It's the courage to say the things that you need to say. It's the courage to maybe deliver some not so great news to your board. It's the courage to have to do something different. It's the courage to maybe go in a different direction than you thought you were going, right? So maybe looking wrong, the courage to look wrong, like you made a wrong choice before and you're changing, you're pivoting, right? The courage to accept that things don't always work out the way you had planned and you need to come up with something different. So those are the 3 pieces that I work on with these leaders to help them be the leaders that their people need them to be during a really tough time when there's insecurity, there's volatility. And like what I tell my clients is you're feeling a certain way and your job right now is to minimize the intensity of the feelings for your people. You want to create an environment, even though you're stressed out and even though there's a lot on your shoulders, you want to let your people know what's happening, right? You want to be real with them, but without the panic and without the stress.
Yeah.
Because that's not going to help anybody. And that is a really hard thing for my clients to do. And they need help with that. And I'm very glad that they allow me to help them do that because it makes a huge difference in how they show up.
That must be a big challenge. And I have so many questions popping up now. But first thing was that I can imagine if you're leading a company with a big purpose, let's say you're working on clean water, for instance, or something. You have this big mission, you're mission driven also as a leader, and your employees you have this big why. And then suddenly you have all these challenges that are kind of just like it's noise, but you have to fix them. How do they, or how do you help them manage to kind of hold on to the purpose at the same time as they have to manage all this noise?
Yeah. I mean, purpose is such a wonderful thing because it will carry you far. If you are leading a company that you believe in the mission and you believe that you accomplishing what you set out to do is important for the planet, it's important for our society, you are going to have more resilience to work on what you're doing. So that's one thing. It's true that when we get under stress, we can lose sight of the purpose, right? So it's important to keep in mind the purpose, to have that motivation. But it's also okay if some days you wake up and you're not thinking about your purpose, but you're like, how do I get this funding to happen by our deadline, right? So it's balancing, I would say it's balancing a lot of things together at the same time and knowing that it's okay to have to focus your energy on just making sure that the company stays afloat while still staying powered and fueled by that mission. But it's all happening at the same time. It's a lot. And that's understandable.
Yes, and also the fact that we're dealing with people. So if I'm flipping it then to the employees, people who are facing losing their job or risking losing their job. I've been in that situation myself where we kind of walked around for a year really nervous, everybody like, who's next? This is a really, really stressful situation. What is the best way to deal with this as a employee who are not used to being in this really insecure position? And how do you maybe become resilient for these changes that maybe they're happening more and more often, and in the US it's been happening for a lot of people at the same time lately.
Sure. Yeah, tens of thousands of people being affected in just a few months. It's really unprecedented. I mean, I've never heard of a situation where this many people were affected on this scale. So I think it's new for everybody, but there are some things that remain true, right? Even if this is a situation that we haven't seen in a very long time, there are some things that remain true, such as each of us is responsible for managing our own internal psychology. Even as an employee, even if you feel like you're quote unquote at the mercy of this job where you may get fired tomorrow or next week or 2 months from now, the reality is nothing is guaranteed in life. And I think remembering that, you know, I'm alive today, but that may be a miracle, right? Like anything that we have today is not something that may be guaranteed tomorrow. So that's number one. It's just remembering that's life. It's just so unpredictable, and it's not something to make it like, oh, it's wrong or it's horrible, but it's just the nature of life. And I think when we can think of it that way, like not life has ebbs and flows, and that's just what happens. But there are some things that remain true, which is if you as an employee are worried about losing your job, etc., I would say work on all of these personal practices that are going to help you focus on what you can control. I think that is the main thing. Focus on what you can control. What does that mean? You may have your head full of thoughts and fears and apprehensions about what's going on, but I guarantee you that 90% of those things that you are worried about and thinking about at night, 90% of those you actually don't have control over. So find what is the 10% of things that you do have control over and focus your energy on that. And I know that's hard to do because we are emotional creatures and we have very complex nervous systems that get triggered, and we feel all sorts of emotional and physical things under stress. And it doesn't mean that we have to be at the mercy of our mind, our thoughts, our fears. There are practices that each of us can do to help us stay sane. So what are some of those things? I mean, I'm sure people already do many of these, but I'm just going to list off some of them. If you find that exercise helps you, at least for me, it does. When I feel out of control, like my mind is spinning and the world is out of control, I got to tell you right now, I'm in the best shape of my life in a long time because the world is crazy. So I'm like yoga 7 days a week, and I started working out with a trainer. And like for me, exercise is a way to kind of purge all of that nervous energy, right? Because you got to work on the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual level. So if exercising works for you, exercise, take care of your body, purge that nervous energy. If you have a creative outlet, this is the time to allow yourself to focus on that. Focus on your family, the people you love. What is nourishing to you, and how can you nourish others? Because, again, coming back to what we can control, our mind is like a dog with a bone. And you know, when a dog gets on that bone and he's just like so focused on it, and you can give your mind any bone you want to give it. So it can be like a rotting bone that it found in a corner that had been sitting there for 5 days, or you can give it a nice fresh bone. And if you say, I'm going to turn my attention to my creative outlet, to exercising, to being there for my friends, checking in on my loved ones, making time to see the people that I care about and being there for them. It's like you are giving your mind another thing to focus on. You are feeding your mind what to focus on. You are controlling where your mind is going to give its attention to, as opposed to just letting the world come at you.
Yeah.
And having that control your thoughts, right? So there's so much power in knowing, hey, I am the captain of my own ship, and I can give my mind the things that I wanted to focus on right now. Like if you like dancing, go dancing, right? Like I have dance parties in my living room all the time when I'm feeling stressed out, or like when the girls come home from school after a day of work, of having these conversations, you know. It's just finding the things that are going to help you manage your mind, your spirit, your body, like for how your body is taking in stress. I think those practices for anybody who's going through uncertainty right now are so, so helpful.
Do you think maybe that also challenges like this can make you, can you see them as a an opportunity for growth as well. And I think both as a leader, as a company, like the organization, but also as an employee, that, like when you mentioned being in the best shape of your life because of all the challenges, but you can get new habits. You can, if you are laid off, maybe you find something which is actually a lot better. How do you do you have any kind of success stories about how big problems can lead to massive growth as well?
Oh, for sure. I mean, there are nothing but, I've been a coach for 10 years. So I've seen a lot of people become very successful with their companies, but I've also seen people close their companies. I've also seen people, not accomplish what they set out to do. So I mean, there's nothing but growth on the other side of that. And one of the things that is really striking to me regarding what happens to people after they go through a really tough time like this and they come out victorious on the other side, because let's face it, most people do. Like, we just can't see it when we're there. But I see people becoming more resilient. And guess what? The next time you face something that is tough and challenging and scary and all of that, you are much better suited to deal with it. I mean, I've seen it in my own life because I've had, a handful of really challenging situations to go through. And the first one was terrifying, but the second time it was easier. The third time it got easier, right? So one is resilience. Like, you become so much better at navigating uncertainty and changes and shocks to your life, which makes you feel like a super person, and number two, what I have seen also in my experience of doing this for a decade now is that after something like this, after a big shock to your life or a big change to your life that at first seems like your life is over, so to speak, even from divorce, right?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, and I saw it in my own divorce from my first husband and in other people in my life who have gone through this. After a big upheaval, you actually discover new facets of yourself because it teaches you to get creative about how to get by, right? I've been laid off. I've been laid off from a job, and I had to ask myself some serious questions about, was that actually the best job for me?
Yes.
Was that actually the best? It wasn't. There were lots of things that I wasn't so happy with. So it led to me discovering new facets of myself, new interests, new evolutions in myself and in myself as a professional. So the second thing is, you discover new facets, new abilities, new interests, because guess what? If you've been in that job for a long time, chances are you're a different person too. You just didn't realize it. And the third thing I would say that you can get from this, that I've seen people eventually end up with, is there's a sense of freedom. Right? It's like, oh, I thought that this thing that I was so afraid of losing was the be all and end all to my life. And it turns out that when I let it go, or I was made to let go of it, by force, I realized that I don't need it.
Yes.
Or it wasn't the everything in my life. And there's such a freedom to say, I am not defined by that job. I am not defined by that position. I am not defined by that marriage. I am not defined by that thing I used to be or I used to do. And that freedom is beautiful. So for those of you who are out there, kind of going through something like this right now, and I know how scary it is, and I know the uncertainty and the feelings that come with it that are very uncomfortable right now, just know that you are exactly where you need to be. Take the steps to take care of yourself in this time, and know that on the other side, there's resilience, there's freedom, there's discovering new facets of yourself. There's something really beautiful waiting for you.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I so agree with that. And you said defining what you define yourself as, and one thing that I come back to again and again is identity. Like the identity you have with your profession, your career, your title. And I saw that as maybe the biggest challenge for myself when I made a pivot in my career that it was so hard to let go of that identity. What is the best way to deal with that, you think? Because it's about letting go of that, and as you said, exactly that freedom that comes when you manage to let go of that identity, that is huge, but it's really hard, I think.
Yeah, totally. And the thing is, we have misunderstood what our identity is. And identity, we have to understand that it's just a label, like a sticky, like a little sticker that you can put on something one day and take it off the next. But we come to take it so seriously. We get so wrapped up in our identity that we start to believe that that is in fact what we are. And when I talk with people about identity, I like to talk with them about the alternative to think about when it comes to yourself, which is, what is your essence? Right? Because your identity is like, managing director of this firm or whatever. Like, that's just a label that you could take off tomorrow and you could be something else. But what is your essence? Oh, your essence is of being someone who is mission driven. Your essence is of someone who cares about your fellow human beings. Your essence is someone who is committed to becoming the best person you can be. Your essence is someone who is a loving parent. Your essence is someone who has a purpose that is coming from their heart, right? And when you talk about your essence, then you can be any different number of labels if you're really focused on your essence. But that is the type of work that most people haven't done. We've been told that once you have an identity, once you have a label, that is who you are.
Yes.
But it's not. Just like personality, I listened to this fascinating podcast. This is a few years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where they talked about personality, and they were interviewing people in the street and asking them about their personality and their their life partner's personality. And then they go into this podcast with people who are studying personality and the formation of personality and what it is. And it turns out personality isn't something even you're born with. Personality is a construct. It's a construct that happened once you were born in a certain environment and you were told certain messages and you were like taught certain mindsets. And so, I mean, imagine the freedom to be when you realize that what you think is your personality, this very set in stone thing. Imagine the freedom when you go, oh, that's actually just a construct that happened because of all these factors that I was in. And if I change the factors that I put myself in, if I change who I hang out with, if I change my thoughts, if I change my context, then I could have a different personality.
Yeah.
Right? So this is sort of, and personality and identity are very tied, right? Personality is like the personal side of your identity, and your identity is like what you kind of present to the world and who you are at work and your labels and your roles. And but I really always like to think about that. When I'm thinking about identity, I like to think back to, it's a social construct, it's a label. And just like personality, it's more like about the confluence of factors that were happening at that time when you adopted that identity. And you can allow yourself to think of what other identity you could take on, because they're interchangeable.
Yeah.
It's a label. You could change it.
I got really curious about something now, because yesterday I had another guest on the podcast, and we started talking about extroversion and introversion. This is a bit on the side of the topic now, but just because it was this story on the news in Norway this week about this guy who had applied for all these jobs, and he didn't get past like the first interview because he was so introverted. And I've been thinking a lot about this, because I sometimes when I do these tests, I end up as leaning towards the introverted side. But in some situation, I feel I'm not very like the opposite, but I'm more in the middle. So it's it depends on the situation and the context and the people and everything. So do you think this is also like, what do you think about extroversion and introversion actually? Is that also something that you can change, or are you born with it, or How is that, do you think?
I don't know. But it's a topic that I love.
Yeah.
Because when I was growing up, being introverted versus extroverted had a very different meaning, right? Like if you were introvert, you were shy, you didn't like people, even people would say like, oh, if you're introverted, it means you're insecure about yourself.
Yes.
And if you were extroverted, it meant you were confident, and it meant that you felt good about yourself, and it meant that you liked people. And if you were introverted, you didn't like people. And that's all been scratched and scrapped, right? With the new definition of introversion and extroversion, which is it's like the system of chips, like the introvert. Because I'm very similar to you, Veslemøy, because I'm also somebody who is, I think, at nature, at heart, an introvert. And but I'm also very extroverted, and I'm also very comfortable with people, and I love people. Obviously, my job is a people job, right? But the way that it resonates for me, the introvert versus extrovert, is that for introverts, at least this resonates for me. I feel like I start off my day each day with 10 chips, 10 social chips. And every time I have an interaction with someone, I spend a quarter of a chip. Or, if it's an intense interaction with somebody, like a lot of talking and a lot of depth to the conversation, then it's going to be 2 chips for that conversation that I spent. And then some days I get to 6 p.m. and the kids are home and we're getting dinner ready. And I look at my husband and I go, I just realized I've spent all my 10 chips for that. Like I have nothing left in the tank, and I still have to get through the next 2-3 hours to put the kids to bed, right? And I just feel really tired and drained. And I feel like now at this moment, I want to start withdrawing in towards myself. I have less energy to interact with my children, or less energy to interact with my husband, right? So it's like that awareness of how much you have left in your social tank. And I don't know. I mean, for me, the feeling that I get when I'm done with my chips for the day, it's like if I'm at a party, I have to leave the party. Yes. Like I'm done, like I got to go home and I got to be in my cave for the next 1.5 days.
Yeah.
So for me, it feels very real and very like physical almost. But is it something we're born with? I don't know. Maybe I became an introvert because I lived in a household that had way too much going on.
Yeah.
And me being an introvert is like the response to that. It's hard to know if it's from birth or not. But I think the important thing, whether it's something that's, ingrained in you or not, or innate or not, I think the important thing is to, again, really know yourself, right? Like do that work of understanding, are you more on the introvert or the extrovert side? What does it mean when you start to feel drained and you're in a conversation with somebody at a party and you're feeling that feeling of like, I gotta go now? Like learn to understand what that means about you. Learn to work with it. And also learn to be okay with that. Like when I was younger, I would force myself to say, because it's rude, right? I don't want to look weird. Now, I don't care. I'm done. I'm going home. Like it's been great. See ya.
Yes. Oh, I love that way of thinking about it with the chips. I'm going to use that, and I can totally relate to what you explained with the party. You just have to leave if you're empty. I'm exactly the same. Oh, that is a good
we're similar in that way.
Yes, I think so. So that was a little bit of a sidestep, but going back to the just before we wrap up, because I'm very, very interested in the identity shifts, and I'm trying all the time to, almost no matter who I talk to relate it a little bit back to my old industry, which is oil and gas, and like that big transition. And like one category of people that I'm especially interested in are the ones who are a bit like I was, who can say that I know that I want out, or I know that I want to shift, switch, but I have no idea what's next. And that, I think, could relate to both an employee, like I was, or a leader even of a company who they have this nagging feeling that this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm done, yes. But where to go, what to do, and how to make that is a huge shift. And especially if you don't get that kick in the butt like I did, because then I didn't have a choice. But so, how would you approach that?
Yeah. I mean, I've been lucky to go through my own transitions and also support a few people in this coaching work and those types of transitions. And the first thing I would say is to know that it's normal to feel that way, because obviously your identity and your habits and your daily life has been so wrapped up in this thing for a long time that it's normal to feel apprehension and to go, I don't even know what would happen next, right? So it's normal to be feeling that way and to be feeling apprehension. But the fact that you're having that nagging feeling that something has to change is telling you that something has to change. So when you don't know, I think there's a few things that help. One is find, I mean, we're so lucky to be living in this time of technology and access to education. I would say the first thing is go ahead and inform and educate yourself on the things that are piquing your interest that you think you might want to explore. Like, you can't be in a rush with this kind of thing, right? Take some time, take some, online courses on these topics that you think you may be interested in. So that's one, inform yourself, educate yourself. Number two, I think is probably the most important. Talk to people who are doing that thing that you think you might want to do. Invite them to have, an informational coffee and buy them lunch or what have you, to learn really what it's like to be in that role or in that field or in that thing that you're interested in, and ask them some good questions. So this is the thing. It's not just going and meeting with them, but really steer the conversation and ask them some pointed questions like, what do you hate about this job or this field? What do you wish you knew before you went to work for this field that you wish somebody had told you because it might have changed your opinion of it? What are the biggest challenges or your biggest headaches doing this job? And then what do you love about it? What's satisfying about it? How do you keep it interesting and fun, right? Because you also want something that is going to make you feel alive, right? So I think that having those conversations with people who are there and asking them some really good pointed questions that are going to get you some useful data is the most key thing. And you would be surprised how willing people are to talk with you. When I was thinking about leaving global health, public health, international development to go work as a coach, even, I think this is even before I started my coaching program, I met with people who were already coaching and had built their coaching businesses to ask them all these questions so I could really be sure that this is something that fits me and who I am, right? So you're going to ask questions that are relevant to you and how you're built and what you need in life to be happy. So there's a bit of internal work to do also before you have these interviews with people, these conversations with people, because you want to do a little bit of searching and internal seeking to think about, okay, what are the things that energize me in this life? What are the things that I find really boring? Like, for instance, for me, I know that I don't like to maintain something that's already established. I like a new challenge and I like to solve a new problem, right? So you need to know those things about yourself. So what are the things I find boring? Do I like to work in an environment that is like very fast paced and there's a lot going on all the time? Or do I like to be left alone to work on a problem on my own? Or do I like a mix of both, right? So you need to really ask yourself some of these questions based on your previous experiences. Again, nothing is ever lost, right? So even all those previous experiences, even if there's parts of it that you didn't like, this is all very good data to tell you what you're looking for in the ideal next step of your life. And then have those conversations with people, and you'll be surprised how informative and how just how illustrative they are for how that could work in your own life.
Yeah. Yes, so I think this is great, and I think to end this, how would you say that you work with climate, you work with health issues, you see all the big chaotic changes happening. If we were to see something positive coming out of every like big changes, do you see any kind of trends these days, showing us that maybe we are at a turning point, that things are... Is there an opportunity again for growth in all these challenges?
Yes.
And now I'm thinking about the big picture.
Yeah. One big thing that I'm thinking about right now in all this political, economic, societal turmoil that we're in is a realization that what we have built up until now, the way that we have built up our world economy, our political systems, our societal and collective structures and agreements are not standing in the face of upheaval and turmoil. So they're like, so to speak, they're either outdated systems or they are weak. We didn't build them to withstand big shifts. And that is good information. I think it's time for things to change. I think it's time for new models and new ways of building what we build. So for me, the positive point is, okay, we're going to be in for a rough ride, people. And I don't think it's ending in the next few months. I think we're in this for at least a couple of years while the world integrates all of these shocks and goes, holy crap, like we are not prepared for this, and we got to come up with something new. And coming up with something new doesn't happen overnight. So get ready, people, buckle your seatbelts. Use your good practices to keep sane and grounded, right? But I do think that what's coming on the other side of this is our rethinking and rebuilding new ways of living and new systems, new world systems, right? Both macro and micro, new world systems for how we do life as humans on this planet.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I hope you're right.
I hope so too. And the thing is, like, people, we have to get to work. Like, this is not going to happen with us sitting at home and doom scrolling. Like, get involved. Call your elected officials. Get involved in your community. Get involved at a bigger level. But whatever you have to offer, time, energy, skill, get to work with that, because it's going to take all of us, right? So it's going to take some work. But I think that if we all put in the work, we can get to a place where we're creating new systems and new ways of living that are much, much more resilient and much better for the next chapter of humanity. You know, I think we've outgrown the way we've been operating. And the reason why we're seeing all these shocks is because actually the systems that we were kind of working with, they weren't equal, they weren't fair, they weren't right. Like, let's not fool ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So let's use this opportunity to direct what's next towards something better. Let's not sit here and just let the things fall apart.
Yeah.
So that's my soapbox announcement.
Yes, and I think that also everybody stop thinking that someone has to fix this.
Yeah.
Someone is us, like everyone. Yes.
No one's coming to save us.
No, exactly.
But ourselves.
Yes, so true. Oh, this was so great. And as I often say to my guests, I could have talked with you for hours. It's so interesting. And I think so interesting topics. But if people want to know more about what you do, maybe want to work with you, how can they find you? And also you have a podcast, so you have to tell us about that as well.
Yes, thank you for the reminder. It's so funny. I always forget to talk about my podcast.
Yeah, you should, because it's great.
Oh, thank you. So my podcast is called Life by Intention with Sylvana Rochet, and you can find it on Apple podcasts, on Spotify, all the main platforms. You can find me on LinkedIn, the easiest. That is the best way to get in touch with me. I am the only person with my first and last name, Sylvana Rochet, that I know of. And lastly, I just want to say, Veslemøy, thank you so much for such a wonderful and thoughtful conversation. You are a great interviewer. I loved your questions, and I learned something new talking with you today.
That's good to hear, and it was lovely to have you as a guest. Yes, as I said, I loved chatting with you. That was Sylvana Rochet, and I really hope you got as many light bulb moments as I had. You know, I already had the privilege of listening to this twice as I have been editing the episode after doing the interview, but you can do that too. Rewind, take some notes, and see where in your life you can use some of this knowledge. If this conversation resonated with you, please consider sharing it with someone navigating their own leadership journey or life pivot right now. You never know the difference it might make. Thank you so much for listening. And if you'd like to hear more episodes or explore the other work that I do, head over to viklavenes.substack.com or storiesforthefuture.com. That's where the heart of this podcast lives and where you'll find more tools, reflections, and stories for building a better future. And a special thank you to Creative Space for supporting this episode. This incredible community of coaches, creatives, and solopreneurs has been such a meaningful part of my own journey and a beautiful reminder that we don't have to build alone. Until next time, keep leading, keep listening, and stay curious, and keep writing those stories for the future.